Hey, what's up everybody? As you could tell by the title of this video, we're gonna see if I was using Meilin Lee incorrectly in the game demonstrations that I had in the initial videos. So just a quick recap, in the initial videos that I made, I recommended that when you're using Meilin Lee to save a magic bubble and then pop it once you make a really long chain. So that way you speed up the animation and you run through it really quickly. However, I got a couple of comments from some of you mentioning that you read somewhere and you felt like in some of my game demonstrations that I actually got more coins when I didn't activate or when I didn't pop and bubble after I connected the long chain with Meilin Lee. So in this video, we're going to explore that a little bit and see if there's any difference between popping a bubble or not popping a bubble to see if there's a difference. I mean, in theory, just thinking logically, it would make sense to speed up the animation. So let's get into it and take a look. So what you're going to see here on the screen is that two different gameplays. On the left, you're going to see a gameplay where I don't use a bubble to burst the zooms after I make the long chain. On the right hand side, I do have a bubble ready to go and to burst that bubble right after the chain is activated. So one thing I do want to call out here in this example and specifically that both of the gameplays have a total of 5 red pandas on the screen. So I'm making a chain of 15 for both. There is a slight difference. The positions are slightly different, so they're not necessarily going to burst the exact same amount of surrounding zooms. So let me just skip forward here a little bit, but you'll see here that the chains that were made were relatively similar. On the left hand side, you see a chain of 42, and then on the right, you see a chain of 40. So on the left hand side, as a reminder, is the one where I'm not going to use a bubble. And on the right, I did use a magic bubble, and I am going to speed up the animation. So let's see what the results are here. Alright, so that was pretty quick. I wasn't sure if you guys were able to capture and see everything. So what I'm going to do is just slow that last part down so you see everything that's happening, and then we'll look at the math. So take a look at it here, and I want you guys to focus on the coins. So left hand side, we're starting with 40. On the right, we're starting with 56. And I'll do the math for you so that way you don't have to get a calculator or anything like that. But the results actually surprised me, and it might surprise you as well. So on the left hand side again is the one where I didn't burst a bubble. And I ended up with a, not a chain, but a coin earnings of 342. On the right hand side, I did use a burst bubble and I ended up with 251 coins. So the results for this one example is that it's better off to not use a magic bubble to burst the animation because you do get more coins. So when I first did this, I was like, oh, this is interesting. So I decided to do a couple more examples and I want to share those with you guys as well. And we'll see what the results are for those as well. So here's another gameplay, very similar. On the left-hand side, I'm not going to use a bubble, but on the right-hand side, I will. And actually on the left-hand side, I actually run out of time, so I have to connect that chain really quickly. But another thing to call out, the chain here, or the chain here on the left-hand side is a little bit less than on the right-hand side, where I'm going to use the bubble. So in theory, based on the mathematics, you're actually supposed to get less coins on the left hand side. And you could tell here that the chains were a little bit short on the left hand side. I only got 95 for the left side and 102 on the right side. So in theory, you should get more coins on the right gameplay. And also keep an eye out on the coins. I got 209 on the left hand side, and on the right I started off with 62. So the results here was again very shocking. I found that if you don't use the burst or don't use a bubble to burst it, I ended up with 978 coins. Whereas if you use a bubble right after the animation, I only got 441. So in the second example, very similar situation as the first one. Is showing that you don't want to use a burst bubble after you make a really long chain. You do end up with more coins. So I decided to do this one last time just to see what the results were. So here are my findings. So for the third one, very similar. On the left hand side, I'm not going to use a burst bubble. On the right hand side, you see that I have that bubble ready to go and to burst. So just to set some standards, on the left side, I got 153 coins. On the right, I have 48. And again, don't worry about the math part. I'll do that for you. But we do want to look at that the chains are a little bit longer on the left-hand side compared to the right side. I got 96 on the left and 93 on the right. So in theory, I should be getting more on the left. But based on our analysis so far, that if you're not going to burst a bubble, you're going to get more coins. So yeah, so let's see what happens here. On the left hand side, I got a chain of 109, and on the right I got a chain of 106. So the difference isn't that significant, but the results were. So let's play this through and let's see what we ended up with for this particular example. On the right hand side, I ended up with 510 coins, and on the left it's still playing through. It's taking a really long time, and that's another factor, by the way, is like how long it's going to take. But the results were I ended up with 1,299 coins at the end. So the total coin earnings from just that one chain, on the left hand side I ended up with 1,146 coins. Again, that is not bursting a bubble. And on the right hand side I ended up with 462 coins while bursting a bubble. So the results are very drastic. This is telling us that you don't want to use a magic bubble after you create a long chain. However, I was a little skeptical because there are some things that you have to factor when you're playing this game. If you don't use a bubble, the amount of time that it's going to take to play through the animation is significantly longer. As you saw in that last example, that last game demonstration that I just showed you guys, it took a total of 12 seconds to play through the entire animation of the red pandas bursting. So those are some things to take into consideration. So what I decided to do was play an entire gameplay without bursting any bubble after the animation. And I'll just show you one result here, but after playing at least 3 games, what I found was that it's actually better to not use a magic bubble after the animation plays through. So let all of the red pandas play through and let them clear. But some other tips that I found useful is try to let the animation play through while you're in fever. When you're not in fever, the animation plays extremely slowly, and if you do have bubbles on hand, save them for when you're not in fever and just burst them while you're not in fever, and try to get your fever bar charged up as quickly as possible. Another thing that I found helpful was to not make like the super long chain that you just saw there on the third example, where I got 1,000 something coins, because those take forever to play through. However, I think generally if you get somewhere in the 40 to 50 chains, you're actually going to be in a really good position. You won't need to wait for the entire animation to play through. Yeah, you want to balance a little bit of just time management and having just enough red pandas on the screen. That way you get the most results. So at the end of the day, it doesn't make a huge difference, but you definitely should not use a burst bubble to play through the animation. So in this example, I ended up with 3,501 coins. Also, I didn't necessarily put too much effort in playing this exact example. So I think if I tried a little bit harder, I think I can actually get to the 4,000 mark. So that's why I think that if you don't use a bubble, it's a lot better. So yeah, you guys were correct. Definitely don't pop the bubble after the results, and I was doing it wrong in the first and second game demonstration. So going forward, don't burst the bubble, but also make sure you time management properly when you're using Meilin Lee. So I hope you guys found this video helpful, and if you guys would like to see more Tsum Tsum content just like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And as always, thank you so much for watching.